I'm Miles, and this is In Cold Blood After Hours Discussion. Here we're going to be talking about the book In Cold Blood by Truman Capote. It's a true story that follows the murder of an innocent Kansas family and the guilty murderers through the process. So in this episode, we're going to be focusing on three main points: the characters, author bias, and important pieces of text. But before we get into that, here's a quick word from our sponsor, Rec Studio. Have you ever wanted to create your own podcast, but you don't know where to start? Well, Rec Studio is for you. It's great for beginners and has all the tools you need to create a perfect, crisp-sounding podcast. And the best part? It's completely free. So if you want to start your podcast journey, go download Rec Studio in the App Store. But for now, let's get back into the discussion. Okay, so let's begin. First of all, we're going to talk about Perry. The reason being is because there's a very large portion of text in Part 2 that talks all about his past, so we get to see who he really is. Now, yes, we're focusing on a character, but author bias and important text play a large role in our understanding of Perry, and we'll talk more about what I mean by this in a second. For now, let's talk about the actual text. Capote had decided to put all these letters that Perry had received and written in the text. I was kind of confused. To me, it almost seemed like Capote was defending Perry. And this isn't the first time that Capote has been accused of defending the killers. For example, an in-class discussion that we had talked about the epilogue. And the epilogue was kind of strange because it was of a man asking for forgiveness after he had done something bad and was going to be executed. So in the book, it almost seems that Capote is making Perry play the victim. Now we get a look into his past and his family and early childhood. For example, here are a couple of important pieces of text. For a while, we fooled ourselves. Kept thinking it would catch on. Dad tried to trick up the place. Made a garden of memories with a wishing well. Put painted signs up and down the highway. But none of it meant a nickel more. When Dad realized that, saw it wasn't any use, all we'd done was a waste of ourselves and all our money, he began to take it out on me. Boss me around, be spiteful, say I didn't do my proper share of the work. Another important piece of text says, Dad snatched a biscuit out of my hand and said I ate too much. What a greedy, selfish bastard I was, and why didn't I get out? He didn't want me there no more. He carried on like that till I couldn't stand it. My hands got a hold of his throat. My hands. But I couldn't control them. They wanted to choke him to death. Dad, though, he's slippery, a smart wrestler. He tore loose and ran to get his gun. Came back pointing it at me and said, Look at me, Perry. I'm the last living thing you're ever going to see. As well as, years later, when I went into the army, when I was stationed in Korea, the same problem came up. I had a good record in the army, good as anybody. They gave me a Bronze Star, but I never got promoted. After 4 years and fighting through the whole Korean War, I had to at least have made corporal, but I never did. You know why? Because the sergeant we had was tough, because I wouldn't roll over. The text gives us a lot more examples of his earlier childhood, and it all seems pretty rough there as well. But this is the reason why I was initially confused. To me, it almost seems like Capote is defending him here, as if he's justifying his actions for what he did by his early childhood. So do you think he's trying to justify what Perry did? Or did he just need to fill some more pages in his book and decided that Perry's background would be a good idea? I personally think it's the first one, but I'll let you decide. Now, sure, in my life I know people who justify their actions or poor decisions by their past, as do you most likely. But to me, this just seems to be overstepping the line. It feels like author bias that subconsciously makes us feel sympathetic for Perry in a way. Now, if there is true author's bias here, I predict he'll do the same thing with Dick. What are your thoughts? Well, that's all I've got for now. If you enjoyed this episode, consider subscribing to hear more. And until next time, stay safe. This discussion's closed.